Turkey has vowed to expand its Syria offensive the day after capturing the district of Afrin from Kurdish forces. President Recep Tayyip Erdogan vowed on Monday to entirely eliminate Kurdish forces on the Syrian side of the Turkish border. He also raised the prospect of launching surprise attacks on Kurdish positions in Iraq, which is a strategic partner of the US. Kurdish fighters formed the backbone of the US-backed Syrian Democratic Forces, which were instrumental in defeating ISIS. Erdogan said the Turkish campaign in Syria, conducted in tandem with Syrian forces, could now extend east, following the Turkish border to the town of Qamishli, the last Kurdish-held town before the Iraqi border. Now we will continue this process until we entirely eliminate this corridor, including in Manbij, Ain al-Arab, Tel-Abyad, Ras al-Ayn and Qamishli. Erdogan said Manbij, the next main YPG-held town east of Afrin, is a particular flashpoint as there is a US military presence there, raising the risk of confrontation between NATO allies. Ain al-Arab is the border town known as Kobane in Kurdish, of symbolic importance as it was the epicenter of a struggle with Islamic State jihadists that saw the US launch its first airstrikes in Syria. Turkish forces had watched from across the border as ISIS swept down on the city. Turkey has been involved in conflict with Kurdish separatists for decades as they demand their own state, which would fall partially on Turkish territory. Turkey sees the YPG as a Syrian offshoot of the outlawed Kurdistan Workers' Party (PKK), which has waged a bloody insurgency against the Turkish state since 1984. Most of Afrin's 350,000 residents have fled since Turkey and allied Syrian rebels launched an air and ground offensive on January 20 to root out the YPG. The capture of the city is seen a major step forwards for Turkey as it seeks to bolster its control along the border in northern Syria. Erdogan described Afrin's capture after almost 2 months as a major stage of the operation, codenamed Olive Branch. But he said more would come. We marked a comma. God willing, a full stop will come next. But he insisted that Turkey has no intention of being occupiers in Syria and only wanted to remove the threat posed by the terrorists. He also evoked a possible operation against PKK camps in Iraq's Sinjar region, saying this could come any time. Erdogan said he had told the Iraqi authorities in Baghdad to deal with PKK camps there, warning Sinjar risked becoming one of the group's strongholds like the Kandil mountain area. If Baghdad cannot, we may turn up in Sinjar suddenly one night and clean up the PKK there. Erdogan spoke as Turkish-backed Syrian rebels were accused of looting in Afrin following the capture of the city. Monitoring groups said shops, military and government facilities had been raided, while pictures showed masked figures making off with tractor trailers full of goods. The Syrian forces who helped the Turkish army oust Kurdish militia from the city of Afrin are an umbrella grouping of brigades trained by Turkey into an increasingly effective fighting unit. Ankara calls these Syrian forces the Free Syrian Army (FSA), but in reality they are made out of different components that crystallized during the course of the 7-year civil war. Some may have Islamist inclinations but have themselves also fought against ISIS and al-Qaeda at various points. While the Turkish army itself was involved in the 2-month offensive that took Afrin from the Kurds, it has been reliant on the Syrian armed rebel groups to do much of the fighting. The groups fighting under Turkey in Afrin may refer to themselves as FSA, but they are divided into several different factions, said Ron Lund, a fellow with US-based think tank the Century Foundation. Those factions include the Sultan Murad Brigade, the Hamza Division and Filak al-Sham, close to the Islamist group Muslim Brotherhood. Lund said while several FSA factions can be described as Islamists, they do not share the ideology of al-Qaeda or ISIS. The FSA in its current form is also a far cry from how it looked at the onset of the conflict. It was created by a Syrian colonel who had taken refuge in Turkey as a force to take on President Bashar al-Assad and was essentially made up of civilians who joined the rebellion, joined by deserters from the army. But despite support from the West, this structure gradually lost its way. This left room for a variety of factions ranging from secular rebels to Islamist groups to take root before being given more cohesion by Ankara. A retired Turkish general who worked with the FSA during the Euphrates Shield offensive stressed that there had been a huge effort to consolidate those groups and improve their organization and discipline, and their wages are paid by Ankara.
Where the freaks at?